Hello, my name is Chief Master Sergeant Anthony Green. I am the Command Chief here at the 6th Air Refueling Wing.
I'm Staff Sergeant Christopher Gamble. I am a UTM for the 6th Communication Squadron.
And this is Lead Conversations. All right, so they told me that we have a bucket of questions here that we're going to ask each other. So, and we have to pick who's going first. So I think we go old school and we do rock, paper, scissors. You ready?
Absolutely, sir.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
now, is it 1, 2, 3, go, or is it 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3, go.
Okay, yeah, you ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, we got 1, 2, 3. Ah! All right, I'm going first, so you pull them.
All right, sir. What scares you most about social injustice and inequality?
All right, so what scares me the most about social injustice and inequality is the fact that this is something that we've put aside for a very long time. When you look at our society and the military, this is stuff that we should be having these conversations and talking about. And what really scares me the most is now we're dealing with a lot of threats with our military. If you look at our near-peer adversaries, if you look at the way our military is postured, we're getting after these contested environments and stuff like that. And yet we haven't really addressed this for so long. And now taking the time to address this and talk about it and making sure people feel like they're all equal. But when you're faced with two challenges, I'm not certain that everybody's going to give it the effort it absolutely deserves. And I know that's not a perfect answer, right? But this is the biggest challenge I face. I think me and you can have a conversation, and I can tell you a lot about my past, why I think the way I do, the way I was raised, because that's really what it's about, right? The way you were raised.
Mm-hmm.
And but the biggest challenge I see is we didn't address this for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And now we're trying to address this as we should. But at the same time, we've got a big mission to do with readiness and connectedness, not just within this area, but also suicidal awareness, so forth. So that's the biggest challenge I see that we have to face.
As you were saying that, sir, I understand and I agree with what you're saying. We must always keep in fact that we have to accomplish a mission and that we're here to accomplish said mission. So when you're bringing that up, I'll be honest and say that while I look at social injustice and inequality, we still must also look at the mission. And to be honest, that's not something I necessarily do all of the time. It's either this or it's this. So it's a different viewpoint to say it's this and it's this.
Mm-hmm.
And now the next thing that I think of is, well, since we can't do this or this and we must do them both, how do we balance that? And where is the balance in between of making sure that everyone within the team feels like they're an equal part of the team and that they have the same rights as everyone else on the team? And then how do we go forward together to accomplish the mission? And that's what scares me most about social injustice and inequality, is the fact that if we're divided in our own ranks, we're not going to be able to stand against anybody else. So making sure we're unified and on the same page within this uniform, within the service, is something that's important. I feel it's important. And hearing you say that actually brought some light. Like, yeah, that's something we need to definitely get after, and we need to have this conversation. Like you said, it needed to be had a while ago, but I'm glad we're having this conversation now, because it has to start somewhere and progress somewhere else.
Yeah, to add to that, I think the hardest part of it is just having the conversations, right? And I really applaud you for just having these chats. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's a good one.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so it's my turn to ask the question. So here you go. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't have my glasses on, so bear with me here. But I think they made it big enough for me to read. All right. What's wrong with this phrase? I don't see color in people. I am colorblind.
Honestly, I see a lot wrong with the phrase. There's a lot to be taken from color. Diversity, what you bring to a mission that I may not be aware of, and that may be something from your background, from your knowledge of something. It's just all about diversity. So when I hear that phrase, I personally think that it's actually making the problem worse, because I get it. A lot of people would say, oh, I don't want to acknowledge color for the most part. But if you don't acknowledge color, then you also can be overlooking any injustices that the person is facing. Because you don't see their color, you can't see the problems that affect them because of their color. I just think it's a way to block it out. So you put your shades on and you know, it's not as bright to you anymore and you can go on, but for that person maybe that's experiencing that, it's about their color, or it's about not even just color, their religion or their sexual orientation, something that could be hindering them or something that someone is using to hinder them that could be blocked off. When I say, oh, I don't see race, color, creed, sexual orientation, that doesn't bother me, or I don't care about that. I'm not saying we shouldn't care about it, but it's definitely hard to say that you don't see that.
Yeah, that's good. I do agree. I think it's one of the ways that we often just, oh, this is too tough to deal with, so we'll just kind of push this over. I don't see color. You're right. It's about diversity. It's about having multiple lenses on your team, the way we look at things. There's no way that you can put aside that we're different, right? They're different. We have different cultures. We have different backgrounds. But we embrace that, right? There's a lot of my culture that I come from that I do embrace. There's a lot of it that I'm not very proud of, especially as I get older and I think about things the way that, my normal upbringing. That doesn't make my, family or where I'm from a bad place. It's just different things that I was, accustomed to when I was young. But you change your life, right?
Absolutely.
You have different life experiences, the people that you work with, the people you associate with, that diversified team that you're now working with every day changes you. It makes you a better person. And I think that's important for you and me to take away at the end of the day is really we are a completely better force because we are diversified.
Yes, sir.
Because we have multiple ways of looking at problem sets, and we've got enough problems, so we need to really use all those lenses in efforts to get after what we do holistically and why we wear this uniform, like you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely, sir.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right, now I'm in the hot seat.
All right, my go again.
You ready?
That's another question.
Okay.
Can you tell me about a time in which discrimination has affected you or your loved ones?
This is one of the things that I thought about a lot when me and some of my coworkers started bringing this into the highlight. I really can't look back at my life and think about one particular time that I was discriminated on because of my color. I feel this. I have this thought, especially when we're standing up and talking about diversity as a command chief. I want to be able to talk about the importance of diversity. And at the same time, sometimes when I'm standing in front of everybody, I feel like I'm being judged because I'm the white male standing up in front of everybody to talk about diversity, right? So I can't come back to an example where I specifically felt like I was, thought of differently or it put me out of an opportunity. But that does bother me in some ways because now I feel, I know this is a little off the question, but now I feel like I can't empathize with someone who's actually had that true feeling. So the only way I can really think about that is just to have conversations like this and kind of get your feelings on, hey, have you ever felt that you've been discriminated from? And I don't know if I could turn that question around, but I have often lately asked those questions and hearing some stories from our airmen, talk about the way they feel like when they're driving down the road sometimes they feel like just the fact that they're a black male in a one particular town or area, they feel like automatically they're going to be pulled over, and that hurts, right? But if you would have told me that when I was a young kid, I don't know if that would have registered. And I think that's a direct impact of us opening up and talking about these things too, because I just don't. That's not something that's impacted my life. What's your thoughts on that? Give me an example of you.
I've had loved ones who've told me certain things, and to be honest, growing up as an African American, we hear stories of how we are to act in different situations and how we're to approach different situations, such as getting pulled over. I've had the speech, and I've actually had friends of mine that have given the speech to their kids about how you are to act when being pulled over.
Yeah.
And then at work one day, we were talking about the speech, and somebody was like, the speech? And that person was white, and he didn't understand the speech. But for everyone else in the room that wasn't white, we understood what the speech was without even explaining it to each other. The idea that you keep your hands at 10 and 2 essentially, make sure all of your stuff is out, you know, your insurance and things like that. So those are things that I feel bring a difference when we talk about things that you may not have had to face or you may not have had to look at, that I've had to look at. That's not discrimination per se, but it's a difference in how we have to practice things because of the discrimination generations have faced. For me personally, I've been somewhere and someone wanted to get the perspective of someone from the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
And all the people you could ask in the class, well, Chris, why don't you give us your perspective on the inner city?
Oh, no.
I don't live in the inner city. I've never lived in the inner city. So the idea was, I'm looking like, why would you ask me that? And I'm looking around, and at the time, I happened to be the only African American in the room, and I was like, okay, I get it. So it may not be the type of discrimination where you're necessarily holding someone back, but the idea is stereotyping that because I'm African American, I have to be from the inner city. So that's one I always remember offhand because it's the most simplest form of discrimination. You see something and you think something automatically, much less you have not had the time to know that I didn't grow up in the inner city, far from it.
Yeah.
You know, so things like that are little forms of discrimination that I've seen and faced. And there have been other things, but that's the one that sticks out to me the most.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That is actually one of the things that makes me feel sad in some ways, and not sad at exactly what you're telling me, but the way I feel about it. And I'll explain. When we first started having some of the diversity inclusion conversations within the wing, and we brought someone in the wing to actually from outside to talk and just actually get people to start talking. These were some of the hard conversations that I started hearing. And what makes me sad about it mostly is I never really thought about it. So why didn't I think about it? Why did it never come to light? Why didn't I never have a friend to sit down and tell me, hey, yeah, this is different for me than it is from you? And I worry that if we don't continue having conversations, getting to know each other that we work with, that it'd just be the same old normal thing. I won't ever know the challenges you face, and that's sad to me in a lot of ways. I feel bad about that in some ways, but I also understand that it's about growing, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you've heard me say, I fell forward sometimes. I feel in many ways I failed at this particular topic, and but I know that I've got to, through the readings, through conversations, through opportunities to chat with a young great American just like you, I know that I can grow as a personal and keep getting better. So I appreciate that one. That was good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Maybe you'll get an easier one. Okay, here we go. How do you talk to your family about what's going on in our country?
Oh, that's a great question. To be honest, I have young kids, so I talk about it, but I don't go in depth. I just speak on the very general level that we're blessed to be in an area where people are different, and we get an opportunity to experience different cultures, different races, different creeds, religions, nationalities, all in one pot. And that's how I kind of leave it. When my kids go to school, their friends are from different races, different areas, different neighborhoods. So I feel good about that. And I've kind of noticed they don't really describe things the way I've seen it. Like I've never heard them say, "Oh, this is my friend, and he's whatever color. This is Jeff." And then when I see Jeff, I'm like, "Oh, it's Jeff." It's not a color. It's not anything physical that they describe them by. It's their friend. Their friend's name is Jeff. So we kind of leave it there because they're so young, being in the early elementary. I'm a little nervous because I know that there's going to be a time that I have to have the conversation with you. Like, as nice as this is, I'm going to have to knock the niceness down and tell you what you might face because you're African American. And I feel as though not telling them that is worse than me, the feeling I have having to tell them that, having to tell you that someone may treat you different or someone may not like you because of the color of your skin, and then having to see that innocence go away and explain to them, yeah, it's nothing you did, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Not everyone's like this, but we don't know, and we'll have to, when you encounter it, here's how you have to protect yourself, here's how you have to govern yourself to a certain extent. It's difficult, so I'm glad I'm not there yet, but I understand that that time is coming, and I'm taking the time to prepare, because it's gonna be more hurtful to me to have to kill that world for them to let them know there are people out here that don't like you, even though you didn't do anything at all. It's difficult knowing that that day more than likely will come, and there's no reason why it will come, so.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old daughter at home, and going back to some of our other questions, you know, if you asked me 6 months to a year ago, I would probably say, you know, what's interesting about kids is they don't see color.
No, they actually don't, despite our earlier question.
Yeah, no. You know, and I know they do, right? They do see color. But one thing about a kid is they haven't had all this. They don't have all the bad thoughts and all the things, all the burdens and baggage that comes behind it. And I think you having those conversations at an early age with your daughter, and me having conversations with my daughter at an early age, there's a little bit of knowing, there's a little bit of hope that our next generation will be a little bit better than, you know, old Chief Green here. So that we won't have a challenge that we face now when we're trying to get after other things, like I said before. It'll just become better. And I really truly think that if each one of us just tries to make a little bit of change every single day, that holistically over time we'll just get better as a society, and I know we'll get better as a wing, because that's all we can do. Make a little bit of change every single day.
Progress, yes sir.
Yeah. All right.
All right, next question.
Now I'm back in the hot seat.
When you watch the news and see another instance of brutality or injustice, what goes through your mind?
The first thing that goes through my mind is we're losing. We're losing. When I start to dig into, you know, why it happened, you know, I hate to say this, but there's so many sides to this, and the first thing I think of is here's another example that's going to create divisiveness, and that's what burdens me. The one thing that I try to do now is really educate myself on what's going on. You know, I was talking about this a couple weeks ago, and one of the cases that was brought up, the individuals, well, you know, you have to look at all the details behind it, because I don't know, it might have been justified or something. And I was like, oh my gosh. So one thing that I really think of as a chief, as a person, especially as I'm growing forward, is I know now that there's some people that really associate those feelings, those thoughts that come across their minds when that happens is a lot more painful than it would be to me. And the one thing that I know that we have to do is be able to not create divisiveness in that scenario, but actually have some empathy for the people who are suffering or feel like they're suffering because of that particular scenario. And there's tons of them. Unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of examples for us to talk about.
Unfortunately, yes, sir.
And that's somewhat painful for me. I would just go back to the one thing that I try mostly is to be able to educate myself and be able to talk about it. And who I surround myself, I think that's another thing that's been important for me, is to be able to, you know, talk about things and be able to see those different thoughts and challenges that people face when those topics come up. Because I don't want people thinking that we're not listening and we don't care, just because it's easier for us to push those things aside.
I think one of the things that I first think when I see this examples of this on the news is why.
Yeah.
What brings the idea or the reason why that was needed? And for the last couple instances that we have, when we start to look at it, as me being African American, I start to worry more and more every day. I come out the house, if I get in the car, there's a probability that I can be pulled over. But it's not the normal assertion that, hey, everything's gonna go right. The first thing that comes to mind is, oh my gosh, I have to do so much more in order to prepare for what could possibly happen. I have to keep other people in the car calm. I have to keep myself calm. And I do worry about it. I worry about a lot of that. And that's not to say anything bad about police officers. They've got a tough job. I understand their job. I respect their job. But me being in the opposite side of that, where, you know, I'm just out, I don't know. I don't know, and that makes me nervous. It makes me nervous, to be honest with you.
I think there's power in association, and you associate that from where that person was when that incident's happened. Is that going to happen to yourself? And then automatically, it just drives a pain and a burr for you. And I wish I had the answer to how we fix that. But the one thing I can do is I can completely listen and understand and empathize with you and those thought processes, and never shut you down from being able to talk about that. Because what I want you to be able to know is when you come through those gates every day, and when you go into your work center, that you absolutely feel that you don't have to act a different way, that you absolutely feel that you don't have anything to hide, that you wear this uniform just like everybody else, and that you are absolutely equal as an airman. Yeah, so that's a tough one.
Yes, sir, it is. It's a tough question.
So if I was to ask you without pulling one of those cards, what would you want or expect from leaders here within the 6 ARW and even in the Air Force?
I would expect, I know this is a very broad term, and I'll define it in a minute, equality. If there's something going on, I want all resources that could possibly be used to investigate whether this is actually the case or if this is the case. I say that because it's been on my mind since about March this year. There was a report released about, you know, injustices facing African American airmen, and it kind of makes me think, like, we've known this for, you know, 40-something years of data, and then from 2017 up until 2019, well, what have we been doing? Much less we didn't know the information actually was there. And a lot of people will say we knew that, but now that this is out there and it's been made aware of, I expect not just leadership, but people in the Air Force to really look at themselves and be like, am I doing something because this is a legitimate reason, or am I doing something because there's something internally that makes me dislike this particular person?
Yeah.
That's what I would want to see. And if punishment goes up the chain of command, at every next step, I expect them to look at it and say, is this real, or are we grasping at things here? Does this match what happened over here for this particular situation? This airman that's not looking like this airman, they did the same thing. Is that going to be something that's, you know, matched across the board? I would like to see the disproportionate amount of punishments go from disproportionate to equal. Like, hey, you did wrong, here's what you both have. And that's what's been weighing on me. So as far as leadership, I would like to make sure that everyone has that eye out to make sure no one's getting done wrong. So in the future, we don't have another report that says we know for the last 10, 15 years that things have been happening in a way they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I get it. It's unfortunate that that's happened. I feel for the people in that situation that that's happened. But let's take that data, break it down, and make sure that doesn't have to happen for the next group of airmen and the next generation of airmen, was what I would expect from leadership altogether.
No, that's powerful, and I'll tell you, I'll definitely take that on. But you know, it would be easy for a command team, especially as an advisor to the commander. It doesn't matter if you're at a flight squadron all the way up to a wing or NAF or even command, MAGCOM levels. It would be easy to say that by the time they get to the leadership level, that they've already been scrutinized enough, right? One thing that I think that we can take away from this is this lens. Are we doing that? And just that additional lens that we have, really ensuring that we're not allowing that to happen. Another common thing I hear from leaders is, yeah, this is really more at the frontline supervisor area, right? And I don't really see everything going on to frontline supervisors. What I have started talking to frontline supervisors about is, hey, you need to have a mentor. You need to have someone that when you're dealing with someone within the organization, you need to be not handling that on your own, but looking up and out to actually get some advice from someone. And I think that advice might just give our frontline supervisors a different lens, so that we can make sure that every airman feels like they're equal. So with that last question, what I'll say is, I hear you. Leadership hears you, and especially here at the 6th Air Refueling Wing and across MacDill Air Force Base. And we got you, man. We're gonna focus in on this. We've got a powerful team that's working after making sure that people have the information to work within the organization. But the most important part is that now, as we come together, that diversified team that you were talking about earlier, now I've got a little bit of Sergeant Gamble's perspective. You got a little bit of Chief Green's perspective, and then together, when we walk out of his office, we're a better team, which is powerful. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, there you go.